Hi, this is Garry Glaub in Mooresville, North Carolina, and we're continuing and we're into chapter 18 of Job. This is lesson 12, and I'm going to call this one Bildad Bickers Belligerently. Right? Bildad is taking another stab at Job in this, and I just want to say, I have difficulty understanding the rhythm of this discussion. We know that Job's friends came from far away to be with him, and they sat there silently for 7 days, right? Like sitting Shiva, right? Where basically they're praying but at the same time, I think they were just preparing their thoughts for what they were going to say. But then, this lengthy discussion, and it just continues. And I just was catching myself because I don't really know that I'd call it really much of a discussion, because it gets to the point where people are speaking, but no one's really listening, right? So that's not the kind of discussion that I was thinking of. So, on the 8th day, that discussion begins. And in the Bible, 8 is always significant for new beginnings. You think about God creating everything in 6 days, and on the 7th day, he rested. And on the 8th day, there was a new beginning. This new world began. And I'm thinking in the case of this new beginning, it's not necessarily a great new beginning, is it? It's just one of those, it's kind of a bad new beginning. From silence was the beneficial aspect of it, compared to what's going on here. All right. But it makes me wonder, in the rhythm of this, is that how long did the discussion actually take? How long? Because everybody, Eliphaz speaks 3 times, and Bildad speaks 3 times, and Zophar speaks twice, and Job responds to each one of those. It's just like this repetitive. I just kind of wonder if this is like this rapid fire. One speaks, the other responds, one speaks, the other responds, or does this take days and days and days, or weeks? We don't really have any idea about the duration of the event, but we just know that there's a lot of words. There's a whole lot of words. Makes me think, what point is there in a discussion if no one's listening, right? And I love learning. And if I had enough time and enough money, I'd probably never be away from some kind of classroom learning situation, because there's always that, that thirst for knowledge. You keep feeding it. And, I know that I've learned more from discussions than I probably even learned from a classroom. It reminds me of, remember a lady that I taught tennis to, and I attended a party, and she was there, and I watched her, and she was a very bright lady. She was a doctor, but I watched her discuss different things with different people, and just very intently listening to people. And she had this knack of finding out what that person's passion was, and then getting them to talk about the passion. And the way she, I talked to her about it later, and the way she looked at it was that, okay, here's a person, this is their passion, it's the most important thing, or one of the most important things in their life, and they're very interested in it. They've put more time into learning about it than I have, so I'm going to basically take that side trip, and I'm going to listen to what they've learned rather than have to check into it myself. And so she would get them talking about their passion. And I think that's just a real special gift, to be able to listen to someone that knows a lot about a subject. And she had that way of figuring that out very quickly. But, with this discussion with Job and Job's friends, is that they all seem to be passionate, but not necessarily knowledgeable about what they're talking about. And consequently, nobody's really listening. And you remember that Bildad, in his first attempt, basically said like the most offensive thing. And I'll touch on that again in a little while. But he's going to do it again today. All right, he just has that ability to just, open up a wound. All right, so let's proceed. And we're going to go Job 18, and this is verses 1 through 10 in the New American Standard Bible, okay? And it says this: Then Bildad the Shuhite responded, "How long will you hunt for words? Show understanding, and then we can talk. Why are we regarded as beasts, as stupid in your eyes? Oh, you who tear yourself in your anger, for your sake is the earth to be abandoned, or the rock to be moved from its place? Indeed, the light of the wicked goes out, and the flame of the fire gives no light. The light in his tent is darkened, and his lamp goes out above him. His vigorous stride is shortened, and his own scheme brings him down. For he is thrown into the net by his own feet, and he steps on the webbing. A snare seizes him by the heel, and a trap snaps shut on him. A noose for him is hidden in the ground, and a trap for him on the path. All right, so interestingly, Bildad begins by referencing Job's hunt for words. And like I said in the introduction, doesn't sound like Job had any trouble at all finding his words, right? I don't think he was hunting or searching for them. It just was like, boom, it all just kept coming out, and it wouldn't stop. Those words just were endless. Again, I don't understand the rhythm of their discussion, but it doesn't seem like much of a hunt to me. It doesn't seem like Job sat there pondering over what he was going to say next. It seems like they spoke and Job just let loose, all right? All four men seem to be speaking without listening. And the words seem to come easily, maybe too easily, right? Maybe there's not any thought going into them. It almost seems like their thought is how eloquent this will sound, right? And think about introducing yourself to a person, right? Studies show that when this occurs, most people aren't even listening to the other person saying their name. Hi, I'm Gary. Ooh, that sounded good. Did you hear the deepness of when I said Gary? Wasn't that really resonant? Instead, we're thinking about ourselves because we're so self-focused that we're not even hearing the other person's name. It's pretty funny. But that's kind of what I perceive is going on here, is these people are just talking, and really they like hearing the sound of their voices. All right. In verse 2, it says, show understanding and then we can talk. It sounds to me like political discussions today, is that I'm only going to talk to you if you agree with me. All right. I think that's obviously not the way to learn, is it? It's the analogy I used earlier with the tennis student that talked to people about their passion. Learning is when we're listening to someone else talk about what they know so much about, what they're passionate about. And we're always going to have disagreements and ways that we see things differently. But if both people go into that situation actually wanting to learn from the other, opinions change, right? Certainly opinions change, and we can actually listen to someone else. And even if our opinion isn't going to change, we still can hear why they think the way they do, and it might help us to grow and maybe help us to address them in a different way, understand them in a different way, certainly. Okay. Makes me also think of Ravi Zacharias. All right. Probably the best Christian apologist ever. I think of C.S. Lewis of his time, was an amazing apologist, but Ravi Zacharias, certainly to me took this to the highest level. And he died recently. I'm going to really miss listening to him. But it didn't matter who he spoke to. He was brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and very logical in the way he explained things and addressed things. But never, never, never did he come off as arrogant. He was a humble man, and he didn't condemn others. He just talked to them, and he didn't talk down to them. He tried to just address them where they would understand what he was saying to show his point. That's an amazing gift. And if you think about it as Christians, especially if we're trying to share the gospel with someone that's not receptive, as soon as we condemn them, we've shut a door. It's over, right? They're not listening. And we can see that with Job and Job's friends. The same thing's going on here. No one's listening to each other. That humbleness of spirit and calmness, there's a lot that has to do with how we need to be heard, all right? In addition to that, I was thinking about Ravi one time spoke in Salt Lake City at one of the largest Mormon tabernacles or temples there, and Christians, evangelical Christians were condemning him for going there. how ludicrous is this? That, all Ravi wanted to do was to share Jesus with them. And he said, when you get the Son, you get the way, the truth, and the life. All right? I just think that that's an amazing gift to be that way. And I wish I saw more of that in these four men in this discussion, and I wish I saw more of that in me. Ravi shared the Son with them and hoped that they would find the truth. And he was willing to share that with anyone, not just those who agreed with him. Right? I think we need to be very aware of how we treat others, even when they don't agree with us, because the only way we're going to have any effect on a world that needs to know Jesus, obviously they don't agree with us if they don't have Jesus already. So we can't just talk to people that agree with us. All right. In the third verse, Bildad states that Job thinks they are stupid. I think it's very interesting because he doesn't make any mention about these three men, or Job thinking they're stupid and they think that he's stupid. It's going both ways, isn't it? It's just a crazy thing. According to Bildad, Job places himself in a trap. And at least he thinks that he did it unknowingly, but it does seem like Bildad is blaming this on some evil in Job's life. All right, we've talked about that before, especially when referencing what happened to the wicked. So we see this in verse 5 where it says, indeed, the light of the wicked goes out, and the flame of his fire gives no light. All right, so why is he referencing Job when he's talking about the wicked? Obviously, he thinks that Job is wicked. I may be misunderstanding this verse a little bit, but it seems to be referencing death. With the light of the wicked goes out. But the part that we need to understand is it referencing physical death or spiritual death, right? There's two. Hal Lindsey had a great statement, and he said, if you're born once, you die twice. And if you're born twice, you die once, right? If you don't understand that, it references Jesus' line that you must be born again. So for those of us who have been born again, right, we'll see physical death and that's it, no spiritual death. But for those people who are not born again, they're only born once, then they're going to die physically and then they're going to also die spiritually. So that's kind of an important difference. But I think that what Bildad is saying here is actually accurate when it comes to the wicked. Their light's going to be extinguished. Everything he says there is right, but it doesn't apply to Job. That's the problem. That's what he's not understanding, is that this is not about Job being a wicked man. This is about Job following through, with Satan attacking him, right? It has to do with God wanting to show Satan that Job is the most righteous man on the earth, all right? Most of the comments are accurate. They're just not applied correctly, all right? They're applied to the wicked. All right, he's applying all these consequences to Job as if Job is wicked and Job's not. There's going to be a time when the wicked, those without a relationship with Jesus, are going to be punished, but that time is not now. They're going to step on a snare of their own making and the trap will shut them in, but do we really want that to be now? Personally, I think we have that tendency of looking at the sin of others and we want them to be judged for it instantly, but we really don't want that in our own lives, do we? Makes me think of the sons of thunder in the New Testament, calling down the wrath of heaven, and it's like, did the sons of thunder want that wrath to be called down to them for their sins? It's like we want it two ways, don't we? We see somebody else that offends us and we want them to be judged, but we want us to just skate through, right? That's just the way it goes. All right, let's finish chapter 18. This is verses 11 through 21 in the New American Standard Bible, and it says this: all around terrors frighten him and harry him at every step. His strength is famished and calamity is ready at his side. His skin is devoured by disease. The firstborn of death devours his limbs. He is torn from the security of his tent, and they march him before the king of terrors. There dwells in his tent nothing of his. Brimstone is scattered on his habitation. His roots are dried below and his branches cut off above. Memory of him perishes from the earth, and he has no name abroad. He is driven from light into darkness and chased from the inhabited world. He has no offspring or posterity among his people, nor any survivor where he sojourned. Those in the west are appalled at his fate, and those in the east are seized with horror. Surely such are the dwellings of the wicked, and this is the place of him who does not know God. Bildad's tongue is lashing out what will happen to the wicked, right? It continues, and in verse 21, he further identifies the definition of the wicked, those who do not know God. Remember, it was Bildad who made the most offensive comment to Job yet, and this was back in chapter 8, verse 4, where it said, if your sons sinned against him, then he delivered them into the power of their transgression. So basically, Bildad told Job that your kids died because they sinned. God killed them because of their sin, right? Speaking for God. All right. Sitting there hasn't changed Bildad's opinion or his way of addressing Job. He attacks again. In chapter 18, verse 19, we just heard it. This is what Bildad says this time. He has no offspring or posterity among his people, nor any survivor where he sojourned. So here we are again, is that Job's sitting there with no offspring, right? His 10 children have died, and now Bildad makes this veiled reference, right? This veiled reference to, the wicked man doesn't have any offspring, so you're a wicked man. You are a wicked man. He's attacking him really at the sorest spot he possibly could, right? Which is really offensive. And it doesn't tell us great things about Bildad. If this is one of Job's closest friends, not much of a friend, right? Not much of a friend to, when his friend is down, kick him in his sorest spot. That's really offensive to me. It reminds me of a Bible study I was a part of. And we were discussing the verse that talks about the only unforgivable sin. And there was one man in this study that his opinions always were way different than everybody else's. And what he said was that the only unforgivable sin was suicide. So anyone who committed suicide went to hell. And the interesting part is that, all of us were kind of putting in our points of view on this, saying, no, that's not it. The unforgivable sin is when the Holy Spirit calls you to Jesus and you turn your back and you say no, right? Because the Holy Spirit, that's his job. He's the one that draws us to Jesus. And when we turn our back on the Holy Spirit and basically deny that Jesus is the Son of God, that's the unforgivable sin. But this man was like, obstinate, saying, no, it's suicide, it has to do with suicide. But the interesting thing is that we had one other man in this Bible study that wasn't saying a thing. And the reason he wasn't is because, very godly, humble man, his son had committed suicide. And the one stating this knew that his son had committed suicide. So he's doing the same thing that Bildad did. He's going for that open sore and just sticking his foot in it and grinding it in to see how deeply it can hurt. It's like, how can someone be that clueless? So either he was completely clueless into doing this, or he knew and didn't care. Either way, though, it's just really an offensive thing. And so it makes me think of exactly what Bildad was doing, is that, there's times when we're going to have to speak hard truth, difficult truth that might hurt someone, but we can certainly do it in a loving way. We can do it in a way, where we're explaining the reason. I know what you're going through right now, and I know it does hurt. And it's really painful, but I want you to understand also that this also could be going on. And if Bildad felt that way about Job, he could have said, buddy, it must be horrible to have lost your children. And I don't know. I don't know if that had to do with their sin. I don't know what the cause of it was, but what can I do to help you? How can I be here for you? There are different ways than just condemning. And the same thing that this gentleman in a Bible study was condemning, the son of this man that was with us who was just hurting and grieving. And, I talked to that godly, humble man later, and he said it took everything in me not to punch him in the nose. And it's like, well, you're a better man than I am. You're a better man than I am. I was offended, and it wasn't my son who I'd lost, right, to suicide. That's just a horrible thing. It makes me just think there are lots of Bildads in the world. And at times, all of us can be a Bildad. That's basically when we're looking at someone else in judgment and we're forgetting about who we were before Jesus saved us. We're even forgetting about the fact that we continue to sin, right? We want someone else to be judged in their sin, but we don't want ourselves to be judged in our sin. And it's like we're looking at someone else thinking that we're better than them. That's pride, right? That's looking down on someone else. And that's exactly what Jesus does not want us to do. But we have to be very cautious not to be a Bildad. I just was thinking of different things, even in churches today, how we have that tendency of condemning somebody else for this sin or the life that they're in. I was thinking of someone with a drug issue, an alcohol issue, depression, homosexuality is another one, many, many more, right? And sometimes we have that tendency of looking at someone else, and because we don't struggle with it and we don't have any feeling of what it must be like to go through that, or even any knowledge of what's brought them to that place, but we draw this judgment on them for that, right? And, I've seen it in many, many churches, just how some sins are looked at as a part of, different than others. When the truth is sin, right? It's not like, I think Catholicism has a way of looking at these 7 sins are the worst. Well, the way God looks at it is one sin makes man a sinner, and one sin earns us a death penalty without Jesus dying for us, right? Sin is sin. It's a horrible thing, and sin separates us from God. And we don't have to look at someone else's sin and think that it stinks worse than ours does, right? Instead, all of us are more like Lazarus, right? And remember Lazarus, and he died, and Jesus went, after he'd been in the grave for 3 days and went to, or it might have been 4 days, and approached his grave. And I really like the New King James version of this, or not the New King James, but the King James version. John 11:39 says this in the King James version. Jesus said, "Take ye away the stone, Martha, the sister of him that was dead, saith unto him, Lord, by this time he stinketh, for he hath been dead 4 days." All right, he was dead for 4 days. Yep, you stinketh. So do I. So does everyone else. The only way that we can smell like flowers is if we have a close relationship with Jesus. His smell covers us too. So next week, we're going to see another lengthy response from Job. In the meantime, try not to stink too much. All right. This is Garry Glaub in Mooresville, North Carolina. God bless you. This is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. This is my daily bread. This is my daily bread. Your living word spoken to me, and I'm desperate for you. And I'm lost without you, oh Jesus. This is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. This is my daily bread. This is my daily bread. Your living word spoken to me, and I'm desperate for you. And I'm lost without you, oh Jesus. I'm lost without you, oh Jesus. I'm lost without you, oh Jesus. We need to breathe His air, right? And it doesn't stink like ours does. God bless you from Mooresville, North Carolina.